Hi, how you doing, dude?
I'm good, brother. It's good to see you, man.
It's good to see you too, man. You were saying earlier before you hopped on formally. It has been probably it's been more than 4 months now since we've seen each other in person, and really over anything else. I know we kind of talk through. The good thing about being so connected like we are is that we talk through like a bunch of channels indirectly, whether it be like I slide up on your Instagram story, follow me on this thing, Discord or whatever. But like what we've learned, and I think our relationship originates at is the in-person stuff. And I think the last time we saw each other was 4 months ago in Dallas, and so it's good to see you, man. I think your content's being great. You're kind of pivoting in a lot of different directions, doing a lot of different things, and so it's good to see you, dude. I'm really glad you decided to hop on. So thanks for hopping on.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Hey, man, I saw a post of you and your transformation. I'm like, I gotta get shredded, bro.
Yeah.
I'm trying to get leaner again, and so I'm like, you're like what, 8% body fat now?
So it's interesting because do you know what a DEXA scan is?
Oh yeah, I have.
Yeah,
I've
yeah.
done
So
that
I had
before.
never heard of it, so I'm completely illiterate to that. So basically, like that totally skewed my perception of like what actual body fat was. I think I got down to like maybe like you know low teens if I'm remembering right. But I think like if you measured me by like objective metrics, I was probably in single digits, honestly, by the end of the time that I was there. But it got to a point where I was cutting into muscle. I didn't really kind of want to break into that too much, and so I've ballooned back up to like mid 170s, which I think is a pretty good weight for me right now. And so like it's just kind of like just managing that. I'm starting to lift heavier, adjust some things in my diet, a bunch of things. So I'm wanting to just build up more solid muscle instead of just and I didn't like being that small. Like being 160-ish at like 6'2", like that's pretty shrimpy, dude. Like so I didn't want to be like, too like I wanted to kind of have like a little bit of like and like I just watched Reacher too, and like Alan Richson is like this big giant guy, and I'm like I kind of want to look like that too. So it's kind of all a bunch of big things. So it's like I didn't want to just kind of stay where I wasn't comfortable, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense. I was on a bulk for about 6 to 7 months, and I
Oh
got
wow.
compliments of, yeah, I got compliments like, hey, you look bigger, like your shoulders and chest look bigger. I'm like, yeah, but underneath, I got the love handles, I got the lower
Yeah,
back fat.
yeah,
I'm susceptible to it. I'm like, I look pretty good, but I just want to get lean again.
yeah,
So it's a
yeah.
struggle, bro.
It is. It's like you can never have the best of both worlds, or at least it's very. I mean, you know this, but it's very hard to. At least you have to be like dialed in with everything constantly. And like what I'm learning now is like even that people that get to like that peak level of fitness, like the amount of sustainability that goes into that, even for a couple of weeks, it's like it's so hard. And so like you eventually kind of have to just like pick your poison of like what you want to deal with in terms of like whether you want to be bigger, smaller, leaner, bulked up, whatever the vernacular is. But first of all, man, thanks for coming on the show. Much appreciated. I know you're a busy guy. You got a lot of stuff going on. So I know a lot of the audience is probably going to know you. Several guys probably know you for a while. I've known you for almost 2 years now. It's hard to believe. Like July of 22 is when we first officially met. And I know we just kind of, it's about 2 years since I joined the community we're both in, where we, met each other for the first time digitally and whatever not. But basically, if you wouldn't mind, just bare bones, give us an overview of like who is the man that's sitting before me today, and kind of what's going on with you, kind of who are you, where have you been, where do you want to go, all that sort of thing.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm Thai fan for everyone who doesn't know. I'm a Vietnamese American born and raised in Seattle. And I'm an advocate for the Asian American community. My biggest mission is to change the stereotype of Asian men. The thing about Asian men is we're the least attractive ethnic group compared to everybody else. And I've always been seen as invisible. And being invisible stopped me from actually being my best self. And that was seeking approval from friends, trying to be in the popular group, trying to attract girls. I mean, I got friend zoned constantly. Dating was an issue. And it wasn't until I found confidence in myself that I could be myself, right? And we can go into different realms with that.
Yeah.
But generally it was like trying to be the best version of myself. You hear this thing where just be yourself. Things will happen, but you can't just wait for it. So I
Yeah.
took action and I'm here. I'm blessed. I'm happy where I'm at and just trying to improve every single day.
Yeah, no, I think what you said something that I want to actually probe into. I have no idea if there's anything behind this. I haven't seen data or whatever. I'm sure you probably looked into this, but like in terms of what you said, that Asian American men are the least attractive, demographic of men in America. Is that like from survey data? Is that just kind of what you've noticed, or like what is that coming from? Like in terms of all those things. I've heard you and I have talked about this a lot. I just didn't know if you like where you were referencing that from, or if you've just seen it like, I would say anecdotally among yourself and your friends. But is there like survey data on this, or is there anything that you kind of seen from where you're getting this from?
Yeah, so fact check me, but I've seen it through a lot of data in terms of like, let's say we'll take Tinder, right? Like I think we're the least attractive ethnic group on the dating app, least swiped.
Wow,
I mean, there's programs catered to Asian men for dating.
that's true. Yeah.
And I've been part of those programs too, and we can get into that. But you know, especially in Seattle, Asian men aren't seen as that attractive. And you see a lot of, even Asian girls dating white guys. You don't see many Asian guys dating Asian girls here. And every area is a little bit different. And it depends on where you grow up too. So in Seattle's very different from LA. LA is very different from Dallas. Dallas is very different from New York. So it all depends, right? And there's a difference between Asian American men and also just Asian men who just live in Asia. And so there's a different,
Mm.
there's different problems within two places, right? And it depends on how you grew up, your environment, and who you hang out with.
Yeah, I gotcha. I had a feeling that was the case, and I had heard that from several other of my Asian friends that I know, that it's just kind of it's really rough on the dating market just to kind of get your foot in the door, to kind of your point and everything else. And we're going to get to that a little bit later. So, you and I have talked a little bit as well about kind of your life growing up. Like you said, you kind of grew up in, typical like, Asian nuclear family, tiger mom, all that kind of stuff. And so tough Vietnamese household. So I was never in that environment, obviously, but kind of give us a little bit of the window of what it was like growing up for you, because I think we kind of hear these more stereotyped or anecdotal stories about like what it's like growing up in either a Vietnamese home or an Indian home or a Chinese home or something like that. So what was your relationship like with yourself, your siblings, your parents, everything like that growing up, if you don't mind getting into that a little bit?
Yeah, 100%. So I'm very lucky. Like I am very lucky to be blessed in a home where my parents are still together over 30 years of marriage. I barely see them fight. Growing up, I have a younger brother. He's a year and a half younger than me. We shared a room almost all our lives. Even to this day, we still live together, and we share a house together, and we see each other every single day. So our relationship is really good. My mom's not a tiger mom. My dad's not like one of those guys that's very tough on me. So it's all about love. I have a really good foundation with them, and they always encourage me to do things that I love to do. Obviously, there's a foundation of like, get your education, get your smart skin, get the books, get your degree, get a good job. Even up to when I finished college, like, hey, you get your degree, you do whatever you want. So I did coaching, I did whatever I want to do. I mean, I'm not even doing my career that I had a degree in. So,
Yeah.
but even to this day, very supportive. Even with the real estate business, I mean, they invested in me to do this real estate business. Like I didn't have to put in money. I just had to put in time and effort. But going back to growing up, I mean, they did whatever we wanted to do. If we wanted to play tennis, if we want to play competitive tennis, they would take us from school, skip a Friday, give us a pink slip and say, hey, we got a dentist appointment every single week, and go
That's
drive an hour to play
awesome.
tennis. So, man, I'm very blessed. I think I'm probably one of the only Asian men in my group that has a loving family, and I actually respect my mom and dad. We were very open. I mean, I talk to them about everything, dating, life. I haven't talked about faith to them yet. It hasn't come up,
Sure.
but everything. I'm there's no judgment. It's all love, and we center ourselves with like being good people and our character. Super important to have our character, because I think the biggest thing about Asian families is about money and status. We could care less about that. We could care less about money and status. We value love, connection, being genuine. I mean, my whole family core values in the back right here.
Yeah.
And I asked my mom's like, what's her core values? What's her family values? And she gave me all those 5 words, and I'm like, boom, okay, let's run it.
Wow. That's amazing, dude. I love that. I'm the values guy, so like I'm like, oh, like that's awesome. Like that's super cool that she was able to just pull those out of a hat because even with a lot of the guys that I have in VEA right now and everything, there has been several conversations like explicitly where guys have said like, oh yeah, I've never thought about this before ever. My family has never thought about this before ever. So the fact that your family was built on such a I would say in your culture, a more countercultural foundation than a lot of other people there is really encouraging, honestly. So that's super cool. And one thing I would say outside of your family, I always like to talk about, role models as well in terms of, who you looked up to maybe outside of the home. It sounds like your parents were awesome role models. You obviously had a really good relationship with your brother and you still live with your brother. But so who were some, if you did, because there can be either answer here, I think, but who were some people that you really looked up to in maybe the culture or your extended family, your neighborhood, whatever the case may be? And really, what was it about those people that spoke to you in terms of like character traits or things you looked up to them or wanted to be like? Was there anyone in that domain that stuck out to you from wide fashion?
Not really. Funny thing was a lot of Asian men say, "Hey, my role models like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan." I'll be honest, bro. Like I had no role models. And to think about it, I didn't have anybody that I really looked up to. I had maybe idols, but I didn't have someone that I can model off of.
Hmm.
So let's say for tennis, I had Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. Cool. Um, Bruce Lee is great, but I wasn't really into his philosophy. I didn't study him.
Yeah.
Jackie Chan, I watched his movies, but I didn't really connect. Like even the media, I didn't really connect with any of the Asian media. I certainly just had a strong identity from the beginning. It's like I'm Vietnamese American, and I was just stuck with that. And I think my biggest role model, I know you said outside of the nuclear family, but
Oh no, no, no,
honestly,
no, no, please. I mean, this is great.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
I would say my mom, man. Like I would say, I my mom raised me. My dad was present, but he's always working. So I would just say my mom has always been the role model for me, and the family dynamic has always been something that I want to model off of. My family that I want to build is model off my parents, and they're the foundation. I look up to them. I respect them a lot. And honestly, I want to be just like my parents. More specifically, like my mom, like her character, her love, her being genuine. I have a lot of traits from her that has been carried on for the last, 30 years.
Yeah, I think that that's really interesting because, in terms of, I've been thinking a lot about this recently in terms of things I'm doing with either my business or my lifestyle or whatever, in terms of, our mutual friend Jamal Dutton, shout out to Jamal. He's going to come on the podcast hopefully soon. He talked about this in terms of lifestyle architecture and putting things in place to where you want to kind of architect them too. And I think that and all of that stuff needs a blueprint. It all comes from something. And so the fact that you were able to have that with your mother very early on and with your dad and more of an ancillary role, with your mom kind of providing that from a straightforward standpoint, that's super cool, dude. And so getting back to the Asian Boss Boy component, so you are the founder CEO of the Asian Boss Boy. I don't know if it's fair to call it a movement, but I'm going to call it a movement because the movement sounds pretty cool. And so I'm going to call it the Asian Boss Boy movement in terms of everything. It's originally started as a fitness brand, but I think I would now more categorize it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is more of like a lifestyle, everyday type of brand for like Asian American guys that grew to be very large and a very massive part of your life. We've already touched on it a lot, and it's very core to your identity and who you are and everything going forward. And so we already touched on this a bit, but in terms of there's one thing just recognizing something and then saying about it and talking about it with your boys or talking about it with friends or whatever, but you actually made a step for actionable progress in this area with what you wanted to decide to do. So what was the specific need or catalyst that you saw to start Asian Boss Boy, and why did you feel like you specifically could fill that gap in the market?
I would say the reason why, oh, I'll go back to this is the reason why I started this because I wish I had something like this back when I was in college
Yeah.
and I had to search for this. And I could see this in my friend group constantly. And we would talk about the same problems over and over again, right? Like girls or, relationships. Oh, talking about the same stories over and over and over again. And I want to also be part of the popular group, right? In high school, it's like, hey, I know these people, I'm part of them, but I'm not really connected with them. But I would rather be with these guys who are a little bit nerdy, who are doing their own thing. So the catalyst for me, to be honest, was like I was in college. I was stuck with my same friend group, and they were dancers, b-boys to be specific. So
Mm,
we love dance, we love hip hop, but we also didn't vibe with the hip hop guys, the hip
sure.
hop choreo people. We said, "Oh man, we're better than them." So like, all right, we're better than them. I'm not gonna hang out with them. But after graduating, I ended up talking to a young girl who worked at Starbucks, and I haven't spoken to her in like 4 years. We never said hi, and we just sparked up a conversation. She told me, "Wow, I've never actually had a conversation with you. You're super nice. You're super dope. Like, you should be more incorporated in the dance community." I'm like, maybe I've been missing something all my life just because I'm so secluded and stuck in these ways of I don't need no friends. And that all stemmed from, my environment.
Mm,
You know, we always think we're better. We don't need anybody else. We just need our friend group. But I was struggling with my making new friends. I realized, hey, I'm not going to be able to meet, my future wife. My character isn't great. And so after graduating, I'm like, man, let me focus on building relationships, dating was something. So I got myself a dating coach, like two dating coaches, went through that. But that also helped me talk to more men, build relationship with guys.
mm,
And I started building these relationships. And I could see, wow, like I've been missing a huge part of my life. And that was a catalyst for me. It
mm.
was college, being secluded, being lonely. I mean, I was the one having the hoodie on all the time, like gym, working out, study, that's it. And now, my life has changed dramatically where like I'm going on dates every single week or every single month. And actually I don't have to try too hard anymore
Yeah.
because everything's
Yeah.
optimized. And
Yep.
it's just like my problems are a lot more different than maybe 5 years ago or even seven
Sure.
years ago. Right.
Yep.
So a lot has changed over the last even 3 years.
Yeah, definitely, dude. I think that it's so super interesting because you have again, like I remember even one of our first conversations we ever had was that it was the complete opposite. Like when you said you had all these problems, I think people come up to me and say this all the time. Like I think it went a lot with the stuff that I specifically focus on. It's like, oh, I can't believe you once had the problems that I have or whatever. I'm like, well, yeah, of course I did, or else I probably wouldn't be able to kind of do and move in the way that I'm moving right now and everything else. And so there's a big congruence there, I think, for a lot of people. And this goes back to the one Miami seminar we heard with the fees where he basically said like, your pain becomes your purpose and that kind of ignites everything to kind of overcome all those things. And I think that resonates with you certainly, with me certainly, and with I think a lot of people. And so for Asian men or men in general, I would say since your demographic is I would say pretty widely expanded over the last couple of years, especially having worked with hundreds of guys for a good portion of your adult life and you've touched again like all races, all demographics, you advise a lot of people, but primarily for Asian guys. What do you believe is the biggest thing that's holding men back from becoming that best version of yourself that you can be that you mentioned earlier? Like was it something, was something that you found congruent with you, or have you noticed kind of a broader trend among men generally, and I would say Asian men in specific? Like, what do you think that one thing is if you could name it?
I would say it's identity. It's so important because I'll go back and touch about the money and status. Money and status is the identity for most Asian people.
Mm,
If you're a doctor, you're seen as high status. You seem as valuable, right? Oh, you deserve to have a girlfriend. You should be married. But no, if you're so tied down to your job as your identity, then who are you? Like who actually are you? You don't know who you are. And I have a conversation with this young man. He lives in my area, and he followed me on Instagram. We got on a call. Wasn't trying to sell him anything, but I just wanted to have a conversation, man. And he was dealing with so much depression, so much anxiety. The only thing that he could rely on is like, I just need to make more money.
yeah.
I just need to make more money. I just have to have the status. this is gonna solve all my problems. Like, nah, dude, you gotta really double down on what is stopping you from being, the new Jimmy, right? Jimmy 2.0.
Mhm.
And he couldn't answer that. He couldn't answer what does this Jimmy 2.0 have to look like? Like, I don't know. Like who makes Jimmy Jimmy? Like, I know. I think, well, I work at a grocery store. I'm a college student. Like, nah, dude. Like, who are you as a person? Like, what is your purpose? He had no purpose.
Yeah.
He was just working towards getting validated from his family, getting validated, for his friends. I mean, he had no friends. He had no value. He had no self-esteem.
Mhm.
So when I see around the Asian community is like the lack of identity.
Mhm.
And even with the conferences that I go to, man, all we talk about is like, what do you do for work? What kind of business do you have? I'm like, dude, let's lead with character. Let's lead with people. And funny enough, the only person that I actually talk to on a regular basis is someone who we didn't even talk about business at all.
Yeah.
And the conference is surrounding about entrepreneurship, building a business. I'm like, I could care less about that. I want to know who you are as a person and how can we elevate each other. So, a long-winded answer is identity.
Yeah.
Understanding who you are, understanding who do you need to become, and then from there, what are the action steps to get from point A to point B?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it goes back. Like I remember, right before your moment at the end of your conference we went to a couple months ago. Yeah, and we'll get to that later certainly. But I remember the OG Donald Knight getting on the stage and saying a lot of things, and he kind of led with exactly what you said. And he asked, I don't remember the specific question he asked. I probably have to go back and look at the speech, but he did something like, "What determines your worth?" or something, and then he starts going around and calling on people, and I kind of like honestly, like I was kind of low because I presented and I think I was either just about to get on the stage or just got off the stage. So I was like lower in the thing and you were more in the back. And so, but he was calling on people in the front of the stage. And I honestly, like, not from a selfish perspective, but I wanted him to call on me because I knew what my answer was right off the bat, because I would have said my faith, like my faith defines my worth, like Jesus defines who like I am. And I wanted to kind of be like in terms of everything else like this. And so I was very, I was very concerned, honestly. I think going to your point when I'm not going to name names, but he called on, I think, like 3 or 4 people, and literally every single man said what they did for a living. And I was like, oh, wow. Like this is kind of it's a severe issue because I mean, if people like, and again, like if you share my religious faith, fine, but like, say something other than what you're doing. Like this is not a money muscles type of conference. Like it's supposed to be about character and about development and about, your personal growth and everything. And I found that incredibly illuminating on one point, but also very troubling. And I think to your point, also, it's in terms of like it's hard work to do, man. And I do it all the time. And so, like I with my clients and everything, and I understand, and you did with yours as well. So it's tough to get people to look beneath the surface, but I think that is the answer at the end of the day to a lot of people. But it's interesting to hear that it's really an Asian guy problem as well.
Yeah, 100%. And it's even within my friend group, that's all we talk about. And it's exciting because when I talk to, I'll just call him out. He's a good friend of mine. His name is Frank. We talk more than just finances. We talk about faith. We're like brothers for life.
Mhm.
And we honestly, it's the conversations just get so interesting. And we get to understand each other. We start to learn about each other, and we start to look inward, which most Asian people don't do. And when I challenge people, they get defensive. They
Yeah.
don't they don't look inward, and they don't see it as a chance to grow. They don't get a chance to learn more about themselves, which is very interesting to see.
I think so too, and I think that that's something that I think it's because a lot of people are sort of afraid, and they're afraid to get pushed in those dimensions and everything like that, and it's kind of like it's the fear that holds them back in multiple ways. But I think one of also the catalyst to you discovering this, and we'll get into more of how you and I kind of converged on this conversation right now, actually, because you joined the Affluent Standard, our men's networking group, and you were one of the OGs, you're one of the first guys in, Standard 100 guy, like right before I joined in, and so you joined very, very early on, almost as soon as it was launched. And I don't know what specific day you joined or whatever, but it was very early. And so how did you come to learn about the community, and why did you take the leap to join, particularly after what you just said in terms of the identity stuff and everything that you have going on from there? Like what made you actively want to pursue being a part of this thing that we're now is a pretty massive part of both of our lives?
Yeah, so with the standard, it started with the roommates. The roommates were Joe, Hafiz, and Chris, two African American people. And at first, I'm like, two African guys, two black guys. I'm probably not gonna relate. But the
Mhm.
content really spoke highly with me, and so I started listening. And I was listening for 2 years. So they had a live show in December of 2020. Yeah, 2020, 2021. I can't remember the year, but I went. I'm like, you know what? This would be a great opportunity to just get myself out there. At this time, I was like trying to get myself in the world and like network and test myself. Honestly, I want to test myself socially.
Mhm.
And I was, I'll be honest, I was afraid because like a bunch of black guys.
Right.
I
Yeah.
didn't grow up with black guys.
Yeah.
I didn't grow up with
Yeah.
African American community. A lot of my friends now, or in Seattle, are Asian. So I'm like, you know what? They're all tall. I'm 5'5". These guys are big. I'm like, what am I doing here?
Yeah.
But I was there for the content. I was there to test myself. I was there to test socially. And so once they pitched the idea of the standard, they had a suit, they had crypto, they had like a NFT at the time. I'm like,
Mhm.
I need a suit. Why not join a exclusive community? Because I know the value of a community. I understand exclusivity. I understand what kind of value you get. And like, you pay for speed. That's how I grew up, is you pay for speed. So I paid, I joined, and bro, it's changed my life. 3 years into it, I'm part of the leadership team for the Seattle region. I'm running events. Everything has just blown up just because I've joined the standard. And when I say blown up, I would say my identity has also grew. My confidence grew. Nothing about it. Well, like meeting yourself, meeting, some of my best guys. I am truly excited when I get married. I'm gonna invite, some of my best buds that are part of the standard, and that's what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be, I think, the most honestly the most fire thing ever when we start like really getting married, and when like our like the first like standard wedding starts to pop off. Like that's going to be kind of crazy. And I think it's for before we're going to get into your leadership stuff right now, but I just think I'm so relieved to kind of in an interesting way to hear you say that you were kind of nervous going into to the demographic thing, because like obviously the standard is a primarily Black African American community in a lot of ways, and I remember, dude, going to Miami, I don't know if you felt this too, but I maybe not because you had been to the Dallas experience prior, but I went to Miami. That's where we met. And so I remember flying out to Miami, and dude, I was terrified flying out to Miami because I'm like going to be one of like three white people on this trip. Are they going to judge me? Are they going to think that I'm a square? Are they going to think like whatever? But like honestly, dude, like and I've told this to a lot of guys before, like I'm blown away with how just little of that stuff is inside of there, like little, and obviously there's things like that are with Black culture, Nigerian culture, Asian culture that I just don't understand, and you guys have to catch me up to speed. There's things about white culture that a lot of people don't understand, and so I got to catch them up on some of those things. But it's like, that's I was really kind of stunned, and I'd actually be curious to get what your take on this, at how much that didn't affect the ability to form relationships or anything like that. Like I was really honestly blown away by that, honestly. And it's like never been a factor ever, which I find just to be the most wonderful thing, because it hasn't hindered a lot of really great relationships that we've been able to form.
Yeah. Like here's the thing, like all my friends, my best buds I get on calls with are black. Like
Right. I
it's
know. It's the
crazy.
wildest thing, dude. It's crazy.
So and man, like I would love to bring more of these conversations to the Asian community because we just get so deep. We're so vulnerable. And here's the thing too. I mean, men in general, but also Asian men, we don't share like our feelings. We don't share what we're going through. Um, and so just to be open with, all these men, it's liberating, it's freeing. And I want to bring that back to the Asian community. But it takes time. It takes time and also finding the right people. It just people and people. You
Yeah.
know, they just operate as they are, and you can't force them to share, you know, their own vulnerabilities. Only I can. And I think that's what God has honestly blessed me with, is being able to be vulnerable and being open. And so, yeah, I think that the demographic and seeing color, honestly, I don't see it. I don't see it within the standard. I see these guys are my best buds.
I know, and it's been like the most like that's been honestly one of the most transformative things I've ever seen because like the standard came together after a very tense year of like cultural conflict and racial conflict and everything. So I'm like, oh boy, I don't know if I'm going to be able to fit in obviously with all these people, but like it's been wonderful, and I'm very very glad that I'm kind of in a space where it's like, and I'm the last person to get on and like beat the diversity drum at the top of the mountain, but it's like I love learning about like your guys' lives and other cultures and other ways that people live or they grew up. There's a reason why I asked that for everybody else because I'm just so fascinated by it. And so with your your transformation, I think inside of the standard has been one of the I don't think I'm even hyperbolizing this. It's been like really one of the best inside of the community from like point A to point B in terms of like that's I think what a lot of people look up to you for is that you have so radically gone caterpillar to butterfly very, very quickly in a lot of areas in your life that I think a lot of people admire you for it, as do I. And so you are not only, to your point and what you said earlier, you're not just a member anymore, you're a leader inside of the community. You're now the head of the Seattle region. It's, I would say, arguably the fastest growing region inside of the standard. You have a lot of guys that are gravitating towards it, a lot of women that are gravitating towards it. So what was the biggest, I know you kind of, why did you feel really compelled to step into that when you were at that place? Because we did not originally have a Seattle liaison initially. We didn't have someone up there that was doing everything, but you have really kind of done, with, friend of the show, Dave Diaz, you kind of have built that really region from the ground up. I think to say along with Dave, I think had a little bit more inertia quickly, but you're right. I'm building a very, very deep bonds with all the guys up there. So why did you feel compelled to lead in that area specifically? Like, why build up Seattle in that way that you wanted to?
Because I was selfish. I'll be very selfish and
Yeah,
say this,
sure.
and most of the guys already know this, is because I wanted to build my own social circle.
Hmm.
To be frank, my dating life wasn't that great. You know, it was a struggle to just get exposure. And I was like, man, why not throw events and bring all these girls and build up my social circle or build my status, right? We'll go back to status.
Hmm.
And it's very selfish at the time. But when I did throw the events and obviously going through the experiences, I understand the value of going to these events. I see the value of these experiences. So it's more than just, you know, the yachts, the penthouse, the ladies. It was really the connection. And so I really value that. I wanted that in my life. I wanted that in my dating life. I also want in more friendships because let's be honest, the friends that I have here, I'm not as connected, right? My decade old friends, I'm not as connected. We don't vibe on the same thing. We don't see the vision. We're not forward thinking. We always just see, hey, we're how much more money can we make, right? We
Yeah,
don't see the
sure.
future. We don't talk about marriage. We don't talk about dating. We don't talk about finding our future wife. We don't talk about those things. And so I personally want to do this selfishly. I
Mhm.
want to increase my status. I want to build up my brand. I wanted to, get my dating life in check. I wanted to find my wife. I want to see potential people in my life. But having those conversations with so many other guys, like, hey man, I'm gonna be selfish and say this. I want to do this for myself. But 10 people, 12 people say, hey man, this event has changed my life. Being connected with these guys has changed my life. Um, their finances has changed. Their relationship has changed. I clearly remember this one guy who has experienced a lot of luxury things in life, and he came to Seattle and said, "Hey, man, this has been life changing." I'm like, bro, that's screw the ladies, screw the penthouse, screw the dinners. That really changed my perception and really helped me want to grow the region. And at that time, I didn't want to become a leader. I was given an opportunity to become a leader, but I'm like, you know what? It's too much work. I'm already doing so many things. And the reason why I became a leader is because of all the other guys that believed in me and will go into faith. I was chosen. They just nurtured me, say, hey, you're chosen to do this. You're already doing things that, are required as a leader. You might as well just, become part of the leadership team.
Yeah.
And um I'm just more motivated than ever to continue doing these events and to continue growing, you know, like status, because if this is going to be a vehicle for me to meet my potential wife or get more opportunities to help the community, I have to be selfish,
Yeah.
because it's coming from a selfless, heart that I have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think the last part before we get into the faith dynamic is you and I have had a lot of conversations about the dating aspect. It's a big thing you talk about. It's a big thing that you've mentioned it a couple times already. We had that interesting thing over the summer where we almost did like the inverse dating strategy, where like you were dating a girl that lived in Texas, I was dating a girl that lived in the PAC or the Pacific Northwest, and so we kind of did like the inverse thing last summer, which I thought was really funny. And so you've done a lot of internal work and introspection about this. And so, what do you think is the biggest thing you've learned about women and your relationship with women since you've been going through this evolutionary process? I'm actually very curious to get your feedback on this.
Ooh, okay, okay. Man, that's man, we can go in so many directions with this. Um, I'll start with what I'm dealing with right now, which is trying to find quality women, right? The problem isn't getting more dates. The problem is, can I find someone who's a potential wife? And I tell my guy Frank this all the time. Say, hey man, like screw this girl because she screwed up my standards. Like no girl who doesn't hit these standards has a chance of having a second date. I'll
Yeah.
be honest, right? I literally went on a date a couple of days ago. It's like, yeah, no. Within 2 minutes, I already knew.
Mhm.
It's,
Yeah,
there's no second date.
I think when you have those, you know very quickly. To your point, you know very quickly. Yeah.
Yeah, and relationship with women currently is like I respect them. I've always respected that women. I myself have been always saving myself for marriage, which is funny because my parents, I never grew up in a religious household. Like
Mhm.
they're not Christian. We grew up Buddhist, but like I said, I'm going back to modeling my parents. They're their first loves. They never had other boyfriends, girlfriends. So they always say, hey, wait until you find the right person. And so I've always valued that from the very beginning. And my thing is I always respect women. I always see women as people. You know, Crazy enough, like I don't know how, the manosphere is saying, hey man, like XYZ about women.
Yeah.
There's nothing great about marriage. I'm like, dang, what's going on with the world? So, but I've always been convicted to seeing women as respectable, respect women, treat them as people. And I mean, the dating aspect is it's a numbers game, and in my head, God's cooking someone for me.
Yeah.
Like she's gonna come along sometime. I don't know when. It's all about God's timing, and I'm not even worried. I'm not tripping. I like as a nice guy back in the day, I always focus on women. I was like, man, I want my girl. I want her to like me.
Yeah.
At this point, it's all about getting validated. Like I want her to qualify herself. And instead of me qualifying her for her, I
Mm.
can be 100% myself and see how she reacts. Obviously, we had to play the game a little bit, right? We had the banter with the flirt, we had the energy, but generally, bro, it's I want her to qualify herself. I'm
Yeah.
qualifying her. I want to see if she's because I know I can provide her protection, value, all that good stuff. Like I'm one of a kind. I would just say that. I'll just say that we're one of a kind, and that's very rare. So I want to make sure I give my time to the right person, um, and see where that goes. And like I said, God's cooking something for us.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's actually a very, very mature way of looking at it, where it's like I've actually never heard it phrased that way. I think where I'm looking for her to qualify herself instead of me looking to qualify her. I think that is the central problem with, I see a lot of religious guys, a lot of Christian guys do this as well. Like, I think that that's a very, it's a big thing for a lot of guys where they're constantly like, have like the X-ray laser beam vision with a lot of people where they're kind of going and just kind of shipping every woman they find down to size. And it's like hold on, like, why don't you just focus on yourself, build yourself back up, put yourself in position, get collision points, all those things, network, do the proper things, and then let it just kind of come to you as it would come in general. I think it's actually a very, very mature, I would say, way of looking at it from a lot of ways. And I think that that's something that is going to get, I would say, very much more inertia going, later on. So, okay. So the thing that we talked about before that I was very, very interested about asking you was about your faith. You've mentioned it a couple times before. So I want to kind of paint like a before, in between, and after picture, kind of where you've been. So you told so you said you grew up Buddhist, and so basically for a little bit before, in the before picture, what did you think about your faith growing up, and why did you eventually kind of stagnate with it if you got to a place where it was like not a part of your life, if that ever was not a part of your life?
Yeah, so the before I was not that religious at all. It wasn't until maybe I was 12 years old where I got to learn about Buddhism. It was a mentor of mine. He's an uncle figure of mine that educated me in Buddhism. So it was a lot about phrases, proverbs, good teachings, right? But I actually never really practiced it. And then a little bit before, let's say a couple years ago, I started meditating, started to learn about, being self-centered and, looking inward and looking above our feelings, like a third person view, like a bird's eye view, say, hey, here's where you are, just sit with your feelings. And I don't know if you want to get into how I got into faith. I don't know if you want to go that
I
far,
mean,
but
we're going to get there next. I kind of want to just get like,
sure.
if that's kind of like the before, like that's kind of
Yeah.
what it was in kind of the steady state. So you were kind of more casual. Is that a good phrase to kind of
Yeah, I
describe?
would just say casual. Yeah, I would just say casual. I'm like, okay, I'm Buddhist. This seems cool. It seems like I'll be honest, it's like the religion that is like the underdog religion. I'm like, oh, it'd be cool to be just like something different.
Mhm.
And yeah, it didn't really serve me at the time. It really didn't.
Gotcha, gotcha. I think that that's kind of where the way a lot of, not just Buddhists, but a lot of people feel. And so basically, they're, what I think is really interesting in terms of people who are secular and who are not religious. And I think like I certainly fit into this category for a while before I rededicated myself to my faith a couple years ago. Is the fact that like, what did you lean on to support you during the time where you weren't dependent on an existential force to? Because I think the breaking point for me and the breaking point for a lot of people, and we'll get into this later when we describe kind of your conversion process and where you're at now, is that we really become very, I call it the self-sufficiency problem, where we kind of really just, depend on ourselves for everything. And we kind of are really struggling for a lot of things. We view it as kind of weak to give something away to a spiritual force. You don't want to like confide in it and everything else. So what did you, was it kind of like you being like, I'm going to be this bulletproof guy that, is going to build myself up? Because that was my problem. I didn't know if that was your problem as well.
Yeah, it was just rely on myself. I have a lot of grit. I just knew I was an underdog. Like I grew up as an underdog all my life. So I knew like, hey, every time I face an obstacle, a struggle, I knew I'm gonna come out stronger. Just like the gym. That's why I love the gym. That's why fitness is such a pillar of mine because you have to break yourself down to grow muscle. You have to go through the struggle. You have to have delayed gratification. You have to go through the low confidence. You have to face fear. So it was all action based. It was all action based. Screw your feelings. This is how you're gonna get results.
Yeah.
Same thing with like business too. Business, I mean, I failed like 3 times. I had a hair product business that I never launched. Spent about $5,000 to make the product. I had an online business. I did 2 different niches before I landed Asian Boss Boy. Spent 2 to 3 years doing that. Spent thousands and thousands of dollars to make this happen. Travel the world. Came out $20,000 in debt, and then I ended up, you know, working at a pho restaurant at like a 27-year-old, before the pandemic. And when went on DoorDash to deliver food to pay off the debt.
Mhm.
All I had to do was rely on myself, and because no one understood what I was going through. No one understood about online business. Like, why are you working so hard to make this happen? Like, this is my destiny. This is what I'm my dream is.
Yep.
And so I was just living off a dream. I was just living off of my own belief. I was just living off of, the underdog mentality as most Asian immigrants go through. So I didn't have many people to lean on. I just leaned on myself. Relied on, like, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it. I knew my dream was gonna come true. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you recently have become a Christian, so congratulations, welcome. And so after a lot of talks with, Seth Davis, and then the conversation, shout out to Seth Davis, by the way, and then conversations with, I think the thing that was really interested in was that you asked, and you made a vlog about this, so I can tag that in the podcast description below, but you made a vlog about kind of what you and Donald Knight talked about at the conference in front of everyone, to your very brave credit, when you kind of said, like, I'm really feeling at a point where I'm really burning myself on both ends. I feel very kind of, my cup is very empty. I'm not really getting poured into in all those type of ways. And so I think that those two things, especially, I know you and Seth have talked about it before then, but that I think was a real big moment in terms of you saying that I needed this additional force inside of my life. And I'd like you to articulate that later. So basically, was that the straw that broke the camel's back for you in terms of saying that I needed to get more into my faith? And I say that because, like, it must have been very scary, as it is for us all, when we kind of take a religious sojourn into kind of the existential world and everything in the spiritual. But why did you end up taking the leap that you ended up taking to really invest in your faith and not just participate in it?
Yeah, I would say definitely the breaking point was at that time. And to give you some context, it was getting into the real estate business, right? Real estate developing. Real estate developing is a great way to make money. Obviously, there's millions of ways to make money. I had a great opportunity to learn from a mentor. I call him an uncle, to not only do this for free, but also get paid and learn the skills and do this with my family. So, I mean, one, I'm grateful for that. There's not many opportunities that I'll get to do this. And for most people to get an opportunity and go through this, hard time of, you know, putting your ego down,
Mhm.
not like you're gonna get shot down. I get yelled at every single time, not doing things right, not looking at details. I got shot down every single time. And that created a lot of anxiety, a lot of like, man, F this. I don't want to show up. Screw the money. Because he'll always harp on us. And when I say us, it's me and my brother.
Yep.
Like, we're gonna make millions. We're gonna make millions. We're gonna be like, in a year, you're gonna make millions. Compared to your coaching business, that's nothing. Whatever you're doing right now is nothing. It's not worth it. Stop wasting your time with it. And I mean, my purpose is to help the community. Obviously, he has helped the other Asian community as well. But for me, it's like it's more than just money. And so we were going through this time where everything was just falling apart. Like, we were waiting for permits, we were waiting for things to happen, and conversations kept happening every single time, like every single day. And I just had so much anxiety. I was like, man, I asked my parents, like, what would happen if I quit right now? I mean, to give you some insight, I mean, we're like millions into these properties. So I can't leave. I just can't simply leave to do my own thing. I have to support my family. So I'm in it for the long haul. So I was like, man, what do I need to do to get out of here? So I tapped into Buddhism as well, just started reading. I'm like, man, this is not serving me. And I'm like, man, I just need to go to Dallas. I need to go to the end of year conference, hang out with the guys. Like, I could care less about the value. I could care less about the speakers. I could care less about the money. I could, like, screw that. Let me
Mhm.
just hang out with the guys. Like, truly,
Yeah.
it was great because I got to talk to people. I talked to, the leadership team, and everybody was pouring a little bit here and there about scripture. I'm like, all right, cool, cool, cool. Some hippie stuff, right? I'm like, all right, respectfully, hippie. Like,
Yeah.
that's what my thoughts were. It's like a little hippie. And I'm like, okay. Um, and then I asked a question for Donald Knight. It's like, man, like I know, like, compared to everybody else in the room, I already have the foundation of determination. I already have the foundation of working hard. I know what I'm doing is going to get me there. But the biggest thing is how can I sustain myself because I'm not seen as worthy. I'm not seen as, valuable. Like I don't even know if I can keep doing this. And I asked him that question. He said, you need to do three things. I'll preface this. He said mentors are great because they push you, but they don't know when to stop. They don't know when to break. And I'm like, I get it. I value him. I'm grateful, but like, what do I need to do to change our relationship? And he said three things. One is to recharge, whether that's yoga, doing something relaxing, going to the beach. For me, that's actually talking to people and just getting re-energized by that. Number two is asking for grace. Like give yourself grace. I'm like, you're killing it. Like if people are saying you're killing it, you're killing it. I'm like, all right, cool. I'll take that. Three is ask for help. Right? Ask for help. And asking for help for me is like maybe a therapist, maybe, a counselor. And I had an accountability partner within the standard say, hey, can you keep me accountable with that? Right. And at the end of the conference, one of the leadership guys said, hey, you should tap into faith. With everything that you're doing, you're doing a lot and you're relying on yourself and your friends and family, but you should tap into your faith. I'm like, all right, cool. So I mean, I literally got Buddha tattooed on me, right? So I'm like, I'm gonna tap into to Buddhism. Did that when I came back to Dallas, and I'm like, man, let me give this Bible a go. Went to the bookstore, and I was like, stood there for 15 minutes. I'm like, what the fuck am I doing here? Literally, like, what the hell am I doing here? Like, I'm not a Christian. I believe in God, but I'm Buddhist. Like, what am I doing here? Stood there for 15 minutes. I'm like, you know what? Screw it. Let me buy the brightest book in the bookstore. I have it right here, actually. I have it. The brightest one in the bookstore.
Yeah, look at that.
And bro, it's bright yellow, and I sent a screenshot to the guys like, hey, where do I start? And I start with John and start going there. And, you know, bro, it's been life changing. And it's been a journey, four months, and a lot has happened.
Mhm. Yeah, I was well. Funny enough, my small group that I lead is actually getting into John right now too. It's my favorite book of the Bible, so I'm really glad. Whoever gave that recommendation, shout out to that person. They definitely know what they're talking about. But yeah, dude, I think that it's been. I guess what was the main difference between getting into Buddhism and getting into Christianity? Like, what do you think the biggest difference between the two was that really made you like that feeling happen within you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to Buddhism is like you have to look inward, right? You just have to observe like your feelings and what you're going through. Um, the difference between just being a believer and believing in God is like I can rely on Him to give me strength. Bro, I can give you a few instances where things have happened in my life where I'm like, damn, okay, like God is real. He's doing good things. Because, like, to be honest, I thought it was hippies. Like, why the hell are you praying for so much? Why are you
Yeah.
reading this book? Why are you doing so much? So I was asking a bunch of questions, but the biggest thing that really changed my life was just praying heavily.
Yeah.
And different things started to happen in my life. Actually, things started to happen in other people's lives that we know. And when I start praying heavily every single morning, their lives change. I'm like, oh, what the heck?
Mhm.
Someone's listening to me. And then I start praying for like one instance, the ex from Dallas. I don't know, I was just praying for her. Hopefully she if we're not meant to be, we're not meant to be. But I hope she understands that there are good men out there. The next day, she went on a date and she talked to someone, and he came back to me and said, hey, the person she went on a date with was almost like you, was very similar to you. I'm like, now she's attracting people that are like me. I'm
Yeah.
like, that was just yesterday I prayed for that, right? I'm like, someone's listening. And the biggest one was, um, I wanted to get rid of my anxiety and the stress and the pressure I got from my job from my uncle. We had a 4-day weekend, and the next day when we got back to work, bro, no anxiety. I woke up, I'm like, let's go. Like I could not explain it. I could not explain it. I could not explain how that would happen. You know, I did all the meditation, all that good stuff, but simply it was gone. Like I didn't have to do any work. And that's when I started to believe in like, oh, like God has always been with me and he's always been blessing me. And even to this day, bro, my prayers have been answered almost every single week.
Yeah.
Like funny and like when people say you are favored and even other believers, they can't believe it. It's like, man, I've been a believer for like all my life, and yet I never truly get my prayers answered.
Yeah.
And
Right.
they come to me, it's like, man, I'm like, what the heck? This is inspiring because I truly like
Yeah.
I went from like, yeah, hippie, 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 and now like, oh, I'm tapped in. I mean, funny enough, my tattoo artist, he's like, he had an opening for a tattoo session. I'm like, you know what, I should just get like a tattoo of a cross behind my ear, something like that, right?
Yeah.
But it's truly when I was just able to surrender myself and not rely on myself anymore. You know, that's why I'm so confident um with relationships. I'm so confident with finances. I'm confident with everything. I consult with God every single day on everything, you know. There's so many different testimonials. I'll give you two more real quick is let's say for the standard social, the third event I ran was a flop. The last one in February was amazing, but like I was stressed out of my mind. I was like, man, I don't know if I'm gonna get all these guys to come out. I'm not gonna hit the budget. I'm not sure if the girls gonna come out. And I just consulted with him. It's like, man, if it's meant to be a flop, God, like just make it happen. Like I'm good. Like you know what's gonna happen. You know what's gonna happen. So like do what you need to do, and I'll be fine with it. There's a
Yeah.
reason why you're doing this for me. Funny enough, you know, I was able to sell a couple tickets to some of the non-standard members to come to the social. I was still one of the probably the only guy who brought in new members outside of the standard and was lit. Like you saw the reels, bro. Like the reels went crazy. Photos amazing, connections were amazing, and all I have to say is like God did that, you know. And before the social, bro, my car got stolen 2 days after my birthday.
Oh no. Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
Oh
this
gee.
the Mustang, bro, my favorite car got stolen outside my driveway, and I walked out. I'm like, did I sleepwalk or something?
Yeah.
Like, where's my car? But I wasn't freaking out. I was like, how am I get to the gym? Literally, like, how am I get to the gym?
Yeah.
My friends were like stressed, like, man, where the man, I'll be so mad. I'm like, nah, dude, like God, if God's gonna take something away from me, like he'll provide.
Yeah.
2 days before the event, I got my car back. The police found it, got my car back. I'm like, yeah, see, I'm good.
Beautiful, dude.
Like I'm blessed, you know, and so um I don't know if I answered your question, but the difference is being able to surrender
Yeah.
completely and say, hey man, like, you know, our father got us. God's got us. Like he's
Well,
gonna provide.
yeah, I think that's so beautiful, dude, first and foremost. And I think like I think that is the central battle for every Christian man to go against. It's the surrender portion, because the surrender portion is like, oh, like I'm not a pussy, I'm not weak, I'm not whatever. Like I'm not like, who am I I'm gonna surrender to what? Like, no, no, no. And to your point, it's like, no, no, no. Like it's not that at all. Like it's actually a sign of strength to let someone come in, help you bolster yourself up, to break yourself down, to make yourself stronger. And that's what gets you to become the man of faith that you currently are. And it's beautiful to see all the fruit that's already coming in your life, man. So I really, really, that was awesome. Very, very cool stuff. And
Thank
so,
you, bro.
yeah, of course, dude. And so with your business, this is also a YouTube video that I think shocked a lot of people. So now you have kind of shut down the first iteration of Asian Boss Boy to now build up this kind of new element that you're kind of stepping into with your real estate stuff, with the standard stuff, with everything else here. this is a massive decision for you and a very, very big pivot into how you want to live your life. And I'm sure a lot of people thought that you were a bit crazy for doing this because it's like, oh wow, Ty like has his business for doing whatever. He's like he's making all this, doing all this, making all this impact, whatever. So why did you decide to go through this iteration of your business and kind of move on to the next season in your life? And why did you decide to pivot Asian Boss Boy in the way that you have?
I'll be honest, I wasn't passionate about fitness. I
Okay.
wasn't passionate about talking about fitness anymore. I understand that it's a foundation, but I had so many good conversations about identity and who you need to become that there's more to to being the best version of yourself than fitness.
Mhm.
And that's all thanks to my personal growth. And I wanted to share that message where because we always think about this, and I'll go back to the status, the money, and the muscles, right? If we have all three of those things, we're still not getting what we want. We're not getting, the attention that we want. We're not having the social interactions that we want. We're not getting the women that we want. We're not having the opportunities, the jobs, the career. Because that's what I did for the last, 15 years. Go to the gym, try to make money, and hopefully some girl's gonna come by. But it was all about the exposure, getting in the room, and now I want to provide that to all the other guys. And I wanted to model that from my life.
Mhm.
And so there's still a concept of fitness. I'm still offering that to the Asian community, but now it's a lot more deeper. It goes into, okay, now that you look great, now that you look good, and now that you have this persona, you look great, how can we translate that into your image, right? Okay, if you look good in the gym, can you actually talk to the girl at the gym? Can you actually be presentable and show all the hard work that you've done? Can you actually go into like I'll give you an example, bro. Like if you're the biggest dude at the gym, can you talk to the hottest girl at the gym?
Right. Yes.
Can
Yeah.
you? I don't know. I don't know if you can, right? If I and I challenge myself to being the smallest guy at the gym that does the coolest shit at the gym, talking to the hottest girl.
Yeah.
And guess what? I was able to get her Instagram. I was able to get her connection, and like we just became friends, right?
Mhm.
And it was just more than just fitness to me.
Yeah.
And with identity, everybody's just so different. And you can't just beat depression and anxiety just because you're in shape.
Yeah.
You can't just be like, what does it truly mean to be healthy 100% in yourself, in your family, kids, and I'm just speaking upon the younger guys, right? In their mid 20s and in their 30s. Like, there's more to life than just making money. There's more to life to looking great. Like I'll talk about my family dynamic too. All my cousins, most of my cousins, they're like younger, like 16, getting to adulthood. I mean, they're awkward as hell.
Yeah.
Yeah, like you're smart. You have these all these accolades, but what if you don't know how to speak to the interviewer?
Sure. Yeah.
You know, and the conversation I have and the conversations they have with their family, they're not even that close.
Mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
like I said, I'm gonna go back to this. Like I'm so bullish on character and connection that I have a great relationship with my family. I have a great relationship with my mom and dad, and my cousins. They don't know how to talk to their parents. They don't have a close relationship. All they talk about is money. All they talk about is getting tutoring. I'm like, bro, there's more to life than just talking about this.
Mhm.
So the pivot is definitely a need. And like even in the media right now, like there's more content creators around Asian American like dating or confidence or like transformations,
Yep.
and so the media is starting to evolve. Like there's more actors. I mean, let's say that Avatar: The Last Airbender live action. I mean,
Mm,
casting for
fire.
all Asian American casts. And
Yep.
so, I mean, the Asian hate movement, all those things have been, even, the pandemic, right? Like all of
Yeah.
these things have kind of
Yeah.
shut like the Asian community down. And so now we're on the rise. We're on the rise. So I'm really excited. And this is like I said, it's a difficult move for me, to go from something so tangible to something more intangible. Like you can't see identity. You can feel it. You can't really see it. You just have to feel it.
Yeah, I agree. And I think you're right about that actually. Like I think that there's a lot of things in terms of just Asian culture in multiple ways that are very, just kind of like you said Avatar Last Airbender, all Asian cast. I mean, like what is BTS? Like the fourth most listened to music group in the world. Like Jungkook's one of the biggest pop stars in the world right now. Like all those type of examples. And so with the content creators, with what you're doing, everything else from the grassroots level, I agree, dude. I think you're kind of going in a very interesting direction, and I think it's going to be very, very fruitful from that standpoint. So, two more questions before I let you go. So, one, I've wanted, I might probably should have asked this at the beginning, but I wanted to save it for the end. But like, how are you feeling now? And to me, it seems like you have all these boxes checked of what you want to succeed, but it hasn't been an easy road because transformation is not easy. It's very hard. And so maybe one, how are you? And then two, for the guy out there that's seeing someone like you, maybe inside of the standard, maybe not, that kind of is like, wow, Ty has really flipped life on its head in the best way possible. And he's really, really kind of crushing it right now. But they're scared to make the leap that you did. What would you tell that person?
Yeah. So I'll go back to how I'm feeling. I'm feeling good. Like I'm blessed. Like before we started recording, I'm blessed. Like I'm truly blessed where I'm not even worried about what the future holds. I already know there's gonna be challenges. I already know I faced it already. And I'm just waiting for God to be cooking something for me,
Mhm.
right? And I've been the underdog for the last 30 years of my life. So it's nothing new. Just now I have a better foundation. I have actually someone to rely on. And I know someone it wants more for me than even my parents, which is crazy to think about. Like
That's crazy.
our parents want us to do well, but now there's someone else that wants us to do well, wants me to do well, even more than them. It's it's crazy, and they've provided. God has provided constantly every single week, and I always go back to this where God will say yes, God will say no, God will say maybe not now. And like I always lean on that. I always consult with God with everything I do. So like I'm gonna be okay. Like the only thing I'm missing right now is the financial part, which is fine. Like I could care less. Like money comes and goes. Like I had money before. Now I'm just in the season of growing it. I'm in the trenches. So I know that before we get to the mountaintop, we're at the bottom. We have to hike like the first 2 miles where until everything becomes easier. So overall, bro, I'm blessed, man. I'm really good. I'm really happy with how things are going. Um, you know, being able to connect with the guys, being able to share my experiences, even with just faith in general. I know some of the guys inside the standard have asked for counsel with me in terms of my experience with faith and what I'm doing. I'm like, bro, like I'm no expert, but I'll share with you what I've done. And that's
Mhm.
all we could do, right?
Yeah.
To go to your next question, like I guess my thing is what, and this is a hard question for me, is what kind of aspects of what I've done would a man aspire to do? Let's get specific with this.
Yeah, yeah, I would say just kind of from the place of you weren't the man you thought you should be, right? Like you knew that there was more out there for yourself, and I think that there's I think I'm going to totally butcher this quote, but basically like there's the Henry David Thoreau quote where every man lives a life of quiet desperation. And I think that a lot of guys are feeling that way right now. I don't know if that accurately described where you were before you kind of went through this immense journey of personal growth, but they're kind of seeing that they want to be the person that they know they can be, but they're kind of like, man, that's going to be painful. I'm going to have to lose relationships or lose the perception of who I am. But like, they want to do that anyway, and they might just need some encouragement from somebody to take that leap as you have taken that leap. And what would maybe you tell that person as encouragement to do that? Did that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I would say one is to lean on your core values and your belief system. That's one. I'll talk about even the dating aspect too, because this is very important. Is, in society now, hookup culture is very, very popular, right? Like women are very showy and not very modest, and guys are just, out there.
Mm,
And there's a term called a Kevin Win, which is equivalent to an F boy, so an F boy Asian guy. And
mm,
so for me, I was battling between, do I become this nice guy that I've always been, or do I become this F boy that everybody adores and loves your style and everything? Funny enough, a good friend of mine she said, you're a tease, right? You look like an F boy, but you're such a gentleman. You're such a certified lover boy. I'm
mm,
like, bro, I'll take that as a compliment. If I go on a date and someone says I'm a flirt and like I'm like an F boy, I'll take it as a compliment because I know myself.
mm,
So one thing is going back to your values and your beliefs. Me, I'm waiting for marriage. I'm waiting for the right person. I'm not gonna do anything crazy, right? I'm gonna live with, the word of God. Like, I don't care what other people think. Like, if this is the blueprint that we need, I'm gonna follow it.
yeah.
So being able to be super solid in our beliefs is number one. Number two is, if you want to be, the Tide 3.0, who does that have to look like? You have to envision who that looks like. A lot of people want to make $10,000 a month, for example. Do you know what that requires of you to make $10,000 a month? Do you know how much sacrifice that requires to make 10,000 a month, right? Obviously, you want to travel the world, you want to do all these things, but look at the facts first. Screw your feelings, screw what everyone's doing. Look at what you're doing right now. Are you hitting these markers? You have to be analytical with these things too. You can't just go off feeling. You can't just go, oh my God, I just got my first sale, right? And then you look at your bank account, you're still in the negative because you spent so much money on ad spend, you spent so much money on mentorship that you're still red,
And to
right? So
your
look
point, the
at the
money probably
facts.
hasn't come in.
Exactly, right? Like, oh my God, he probably backcharged it. It's like, hey, I want my refund. It's like, oh my God, what is going on?
Yeah.
So being able to point out who this new person have to looks like, envision it, and also what does the amount of work you need to do to become this new person.
Mhm.
Does that mean you have to kill off the relationships that you have? Does that mean you have to take more time with your business? Does that take more time, with your faith or working out and getting in shape? So paint your point B, understand your point A, and then build that roadmap.
Yeah.
I would also say is understand that whatever you're doing right now is not going to get you where you want to be.
Mhm.
You understand that if you want to be this person, you can't just be doing the same thing that you've been doing for the last 30 years. You know, you may have been told, if you get money, if you get your status up, you're gonna get your girl. Well, what has that gotten you so far in the last 30 years? Your style hasn't changed, your skills hasn't changed, your environment hasn't changed. What do you expect is going to happen? You can't, and you're expecting someone to come up and expect you to love you just because of your personality. You can wait all your life,
Yeah.
you can wait all your life, but I choose to chase for it. And funny enough, a good friend of mine just got married or proposed yesterday. I'm like, it's all good. Like, this is my race. I only have to focus on me, and is stirring up right now. I don't need to wait. I'm gonna be patient, but I'm also still gonna take action. Right? It's just also like And this is a great analogy. It's a person who there's two people. One person, farmer who is, praying for rain to grow the crops. The second person is a farmer who has prepared his crops, and then when it starts raining, it's gonna grow. So he's still working on himself. He's still waiting for the opportunity, but he's still putting in the work. He's not just praying. Like,
Mm,
oh my God, we need some rain here. So do the work, take action, pay for speed, pay for mentorships, do what you need to do to get there. Because at the end of the day, it's cliche. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey.
yeah.
Because the growth of getting to your destination is more important than the actual destination.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. One more question for you in the namesake of this podcast and in your last answer, actually. So, what do you value the most and why?
Hmm. Character. I value character. It has to be the foundation. Because if you stripped everything away from you, who are you as a person? Like, take away the jackets, the suits, the clothes. Like, who are you as a person? Can you speak on that? Can you lead with character? And I've gotten myself into really good situations because of my character and who I am. And I'm blessed to have people who can rely on me as a brother. And screw the money. Really screw the money, because
Mm.
if I can help someone find peace and be a guide for them, bro, it's a wrap. It's a wrap.
Hi, fam. That was awesome, dude. I appreciate you coming on, man. That was a great answer. This is a really, really fascinating discussion, and so I appreciate you a lot, man. Like as a friend, as hopefully one of those people that you just mentioned earlier on, as someone you can depend on, and you want to, we can have a mutualistic relationship both ways. But this is a blessing of a conversation, man. So I really appreciate it. So thanks for coming on, dude. And I hope we get to meet in person soon again. I know we will. Count me in for one of those a Seattle event later in the fall. I'll definitely make my way up there.
Yeah, come through, man. You're welcome. I
Yeah, will
appreciate
do.
it.
Yeah, awesome, dude. Okay. To everyone watching and or listening, thank you very much for listening. Own the day, open your mind, and we will talk to you guys soon.